Welcome back to Story Dive, and who doesn't love a good revenge story? All month long, April is the Karma Files, the best pro-revenge stories straight from Reddit. Let's get into it. New episodes drop every Friday at 7 p.m. Hit subscribe so Karma finds you first. This first one was posted by you, Perfect Hamburg 8012 on our Nuclear Revenge. This post reads, "Steal my money, take my house, put me into debt. Now it's time for me to ruin your life. My ex stole close to 90,000 euros from me. Money I had saved up over 9 years. When I took her to court, I lost due to lack of evidence. I felt completely destroyed. She then sued me for emotional damages and I had to pay her 55,000 euros on top of everything else. I was forced to sell my house and take out a big loan from the bank. I moved in with a friend who helped me find a good lawyer. In one day, that lawyer helped me more than anyone had in months. He pulled the bank records and found something interesting. On the 29th of June, a transaction had been made from my account and never made it. I wasn't even in the country at the time. Well, would you look at that? I was ready to go back to court when I found out something else. She had bought my house, my old house. And here's the thing. I had a safe hidden in the bathroom behind the cabinet that she never knew about. She ruined my life, so I decided to ruin hers even more. I had an accomplice help me buy about 400 euros worth of drugs and used a friend to hide them inside that safe. That code was 0000. I never got around to changing it. Then before taking her back to court, I had that same friend tip off the police. It took about a week for the police to get a search warrant. They found nothing in the first 2 hours, and they wouldn't have if my friend hadn't remembered to leave the safe cover open. 400 euros worth of drugs. That's a 5,000 euro fine and 12 years in prison. But I wasn't done yet. Back in court, my lawyer presented the bank footage from when the money was transferred. He also had documentation proving I was not in the country when it happened, and we had traced the account the money was sent to. The name on that account was my ex. Look how the tables turned. My lawyer demanded payment for emotional damages, or the stolen money, the house back, and an amount equal to twice the debt I had taken out from the bank. Total around 140,000 euros. The look on her face when everything came crashing down was completely worth it. On top of the 12 years for drug possession, she received an additional 25 years for theft and false testimony. Enjoy it. Damn, talk about not pissing off the wrong person. That was story 1 of 8. Let's keep it going. This one was posted by UCO Elshon on our Nuclear Revenge. This post reads, "Found my girlfriend cheating on me with my close friend. I had him arrested and ghosted her. My wife Rachel and I grew up together in a town of about 30,000 people. We knew each other from around age 6 or 7. We were inseparable. At 16 we started dating. At 18 we moved away for work. By 20 we were married and had bought our first house. At 22 we found out she was pregnant with a boy. Then disaster struck. About 5 weeks before she was due to go on maternity leave, a large shelving unit at her workplace collapsed and crushed her. I was told that both she and our child were killed instantly. 2 colleagues were also injured, one left paralyzed, the other losing a leg. The company had knowingly continued using shelving that had been written off as unsafe to save money. I still haven't fully forgiven the executives who made that decision. They cut short the love of my life and killed our unborn child. They tried to settle out of court. I called it blood money and refused. The case went to court, got media attention, involved several politicians, and eventually settled for close to 10 times what they initially offered. Executives were sacked, others were jailed. During all of this, I was still working in telecommunications. My mother moved in to help me keep it together. I was offered a promotion that required a lot of travel. I requested an office in my hometown branch so I could stay connected to where Rachel and I had grown up. They agreed. About a year later, I bought a house in my hometown so I wasn't staying at my parents' place every trip. This is important for later. It's now about 4 years after losing Rachel that our story really begins. I had just returned from a work trip on Friday when Harry, the branch's managing director, walked into my office. We had grown up together too. He'd become a close friend since I came back. He invited me to a house party that evening. I said yes. I felt like a few drinks were in order. It was there that Harry introduced me to Catherine. She was a new hire at the branch, getting to know everyone in town. We hit it off immediately. As much of a cliche as it sounds, it was almost like Rachel was standing in front of me again instead of Catherine. After 2 years of dating, she moved into my hometown house. Everything was going well, her parents approved. Rachel's parents were happy someone could make me smile again. Then, close to a year in, things started to change. Skype calls were cut short. Neighbors mentioned a car matching Harry's description was always parked in the back alley behind my house whenever I was away on business. Clothes that weren't mine appeared in my wardrobe. All signs pointed to cheating. She said nothing was happening, Harry was just coming over occasionally to discuss business. I chalked it up to paranoia and carried on. But the feeling never went away. About 6 months later, I finished a large contract early and paid for a flight home to surprise her. On the drive-in, part of me wanted to check the back alley. Sure enough, Harry's car was blocking my back gate. I thought maybe it was just a neighbor packing badly, until I recognized the car. If it hadn't been for the hedges I planted years ago for privacy, I might have driven straight past my own house. I parked behind his car and walked toward the back of the house. Through the kitchen window I saw Harry and Catherine together. I froze. Time stopped. There was my close friend, having sex with my girlfriend, in my kitchen. I didn't know what to do. I turned around and sat in my car. I was crying hard. But the sadness turned into something else very quickly. The same kind of anger I felt toward the executors who took Rachel from me. I decided right there that I was going to destroy both of them. I drove back up the alley far enough to still see Harry's car. I called Catherine's phone. They were still going at it when it rang. They both saw my name on the screen and let it ring out. I called again. This time she answered. As she did, I hung up and started driving toward the house. She called back immediately. She asked why I was calling so late. I told her I was about 10 minutes from home and didn't want to scare her coming in late. She acted thrilled that I was coming home early. The call ended fast. She said she was going to get up and get changed into something. I said bye and hung up. A few moments later, Harry came flying through the back gate, still half dressed, and took off like a bat out of hell. I waited a moment, then pulled into the same spot. The rest of that night was uneventful. After she fell asleep, I went to my office down the hall. I couldn't sleep. I needed to plan. My mother always taught me to allow karma to take its course. But this time I decided karma could use a helping hand. I knew Harry had a drug habit he kept very private. I found out accidentally once seeing something left out at his place but pretended not to notice. I made some discreet inquiries and within a few days had a decent enough stash for my plan to work. About a month later I had friends over for a barbecue, including Harry. I made sure to get him sufficiently drunk, then told him to stay the night and sleep it off. In the early hours of that morning I hid the drugs along with some of my personal belongings in various places around his car, with the biggest stash in the tire. Well, after driving him home the next day because he was too drunk to drive, I planted more drugs and personal items inside his house too. A few days later I staged a break-in at my own place, smashing the back pane of my kitchen door and leaving it open before heading back to the city for a flight. When I landed I had messages from my panicked mum, from Catherine in tears, and from the local police. I told the police I was away on business and would be back the following week. I got Catherine to stay at my parents' while I was gone and had my dad organize a security company to install cameras and an alarm system, with police approval so as not to disturb the crime scene. When I got home, I did the full shocked routine, finding things missing, filing a police report. Then the security rep walked Catherine and me through the camera system. Catherine asked, "What if we want to do things without being recorded?" I knew exactly why she was asking. The rep showed us how to pause recording on certain cameras. I walked him out and quietly asked him one more thing. If a camera is switched off, can I get a notification? He came back in and set up email alerts for exactly that. All I had to do was wait. I went to our legal advice to make sure my plan was legally watertight. A lawyer confirmed that because we hadn't lived together long enough to qualify as de facto, and because I was the sole bill payer with her name on nothing, she had no legal claim to anything. The following week, work offered me a promotion back in the city. I accepted. 6 weeks before the move, more than enough time to gather everything I needed. Back in my hometown the following week, I set the final stages in motion. I went to Harry and asked him to approve a week of vacation for Catherine in 2 weeks' time. I told him I wanted to send her away with a couple of friends before proposing. He jumped up and hugged me. That night I told Catherine I had booked her and 2 friends on an all-expenses-paid tropical spa retreat for a week. She screamed like a kid on Christmas morning. I told her I'd be in the city the whole week and wouldn't be home until she was already leaving, so I wouldn't get to see her before she went. She seemed disappointed. I told her it would be worth it when she got back. What I didn't tell her was that I had actually booked 2 weeks off and was going to spend it on the other side of the country, getting my head straight and enjoying the first real breath of freedom I'd had in months. 2 Sundays later I flew back and drove past my house. Harry's car was there. Like the first night, I parked up the road and checked the camera feed on my phone. They were asleep in my bed. No surprise, they had been doing this the entire 2 weeks I was away. I blocked my caller ID and called the police. I told them I was a concerned neighbor who had seen someone in the back alley passing things through car windows and peering into properties. I gave them Harry's plate and description. They said they'd send someone right away. Then I called Catherine and told her I was about 10 minutes from home and desperately wanted to surprise her. Looking at the camera footage now, I laugh at the commotion. Harry was half-dressed and flying out the back door in seconds. As he was peeling away, a police car rounded the corner right behind him and gave chase. I pulled in, greeted an excited Catherine, did all the couple things, and waited until she was asleep. The next morning, after she and her friends were bundled into the car for their trip, I called my removalist friend and apologized for the short notice. I needed my place packed and moved on Friday. Later that day, police called and asked me to come identify some property recovered from a suspect that matched items I had reported stolen. I grinned. I went down and confirmed what I could. Some items were still unaccounted for, still at Harry's house, which they hadn't searched yet. Harry was disgraced and fired for drug possession and stolen property. That night I went to Rachel's parents and mine and told them what had happened, omitting certain details and that I was moving back to the city without Catherine. They were upset I hadn't said anything sooner, but proud that I had handled it with my head. I left her a folder with all the evidence, the legal documents. Then I drove back to the city. Sunday morning I woke up to dozens of missed calls and messages. Catherine had come home early after hearing rumors something was happening in town. She went to my parents. They closed the door on her. She eventually got through to Becky, who handed her the folder. I was a little worried she might show up at my door. She never did. As for Catherine, I've been told she was quietly moved to administrative duties before eventually being transferred to another state entirely. Her reputation in that town is gone. I don't regret any of it. Harry knew Rachel and I growing up. That was story 2 of 3. If you're still here, hit that subscribe button right now so you don't miss next week's Karma Files. Let's keep going. This one was posted by UF1GATR Jet24 on R Pro Revenge. This post reads, "Keep screwing over your group members. This teacher is tired of your shit. I've been teaching for many years. In my first year I got absolutely destroyed by entitled parents at a tough school. I was accused of racism for asking kids to stop talking. Parents would show up unannounced to tell me I was a bad teacher and a bad human being. My principal told me to let rules slide because he was tired of hearing from parents. I nearly quit halfway through that first semester. But instead that experience defined the kind of teacher I became. I needed to be untouchable. I needed to focus on the one job that mattered, teaching kids. My next school was in a wealthy area. Parents made millions, but my new principal had my back as long as I followed school policy to the letter, and I did. Every single time a parent tried to rip into me, I ripped back harder. I developed a reputation as someone you simply could not mess with. My class was built so that if you tried your best, you were guaranteed to C, work really hard, and you could get a B or an A. I also used the school's online grading system for nearly everything so I could document when a student looked at an assignment, how long they spent on it, and whether they were played. This meant that when a parent showed up screaming that the test was too hard, I could calmly say, "Your child didn't attempt 9 of the homework assignments until 11 p.m. the night before the test." Impossible to blame me at that point. Now this particular year, something different happened. I got a wave of knucklehead seniors who all shifted their schedules to be in the same class period together. 7 of them. And they came with parents who loved to make trouble. Then came the first group project. The idiot collective formed 2 groups and immediately crashed and burned. They goofed around during class time, left everything until the weekend before it was due, then dumped all the work on one kid at the last minute. I handed out the grades they earned and was immediately pulled into parent meetings. Every meeting was the same. My kid did all the work. My kid didn't understand the assignment. I handed over my detailed rubric, the one I had printed and emailed to every student on day 1. The parents read it, turned to their kid, and asked where the missing parts were. The kid said his group members were responsible. I said I can only grade what I receive. Meeting over. The good news, I gave every parent assignments increase in value throughout the semester so their kid could still earn an A. Extra credit was seeded throughout. They left satisfied. Then they decided it was the other kid's fault and banned their precious child from working with their former group members. Like a cancer, these seniors started spreading through every group in my class. Every group project I assigned, they would bribe and sucker other students into letting them join, buying lunches, bringing gifts. The day before a project started, all 7 seniors would sit at separate tables to pull the "I'm already here" card. Other students started coming to me saying they were doing all the work while the senior in their group contributed nothing. I told them to use the group contract, a document I had every group write that detailed who does what and when. That contract gave me legal cover to dismiss a bad group member and give them a 0. But the other students were too scared to use it because they feared these seniors. I was biding my time. Here's where the plan starts. One random day in class, I announced that I was going to drop the last group project before finals to relieve stress. The class cheered. Then I told them the next project would be moved back a few weeks, extended by a week, and because I had cancelled the last one, it would now be worth roughly 20% of their final grade. Screwing it up could kill your grade. The class shrugged. These seniors grinned. What nobody knew was that I had already found out about Senior Ditch Day, a secret tradition the school didn't officially condone. I knew the date a month in advance. The Friday before the project started, I announced in class, "Okay, I'm introducing the project now so you can get into groups today and we can start first thing Monday morning. Groups need to be locked in before the weekend." The room filled with smiles. Because it was Senior Ditch Day and all 7 seniors were about to be absent. With all 7 gone, groups formed immediately and cleanly. Even better, a couple of students had transferred out at semester, which meant the numbers now forced the 7 seniors to work together on this last project in 2 groups. I sent out a notification that evening. Any absent students needed to contact their classmates before Monday morning to establish groups. I can prove I sent it. They never opened it. Monday morning, the seniors came strolling in and discovered there were only 2 tables left. The rest of the class immediately pulled out the rubric. The seniors looked around frantically. They had been played and they knew it. Larry immediately tried to sweet-talk his way into another group, claiming they needed a fifth member. I told him if he wanted in, I would expect double the work they would need to complete the project twice. The other kids voted. Larry was the only one who voted yes. The other kids physically shooed the remaining seniors away when they tried the same move. The seniors spent the entire period arguing about who would work with who. They eventually formed 3 groups of their own. I wished them the best of luck. I immediately emailed Curly's parents and Mo's mom that their sons had chosen to work with each other. Curly's parents wrote back saying they would make sure Curly writes a proper group contract. They believed he was the star who would do all the work and fire anyone who didn't pull their weight. Mo's mom demanded a meeting. I waited the full 48 hours allowed by policy before responding, then waited another 48 to confirm a time. That's how it works. A week before the project was due, neither senior group had started. The HMS class average was about to hit an iceberg. When the projects came in, there was some of the worst work I'd ever seen. Mo and Curly's group had gotten into a text fight the weekend before it was due and made one kid do everything. Laray's group turned in something equally terrible. All 7 seniors dropped at least 1 letter grade. Some dropped 2. This was 4 weeks before graduation. Curly's parents demanded a meeting. I showed up with a text exchange between the seniors that ended with "you do it." Curly refused to hand over his phone to confirm. I then pulled up a spreadsheet of all his group project scores across the year highlighted. Among the worst in the class, his dad pointedly asked him, "Which part did you do?" Curly burst into tears. His parents kicked him out of the meeting and shook my hand. I offered tutoring, he never showed up. 3 emails later his dad wrote, "We've decided he needs to learn to be an adult. Thank you for your efforts." Curly spent the rest of the semester watching YouTube on his phone. Mo's mom flipped and demanded answers. She got the same ones. After exhausting every angle to blame me, she finally admitted she knew Mo had been part of bullying another student into doing the work. She agreed to tutoring. Then Larry showed up at her house and fed her stories that I had been emotionally abusing Mo after school when no one was watching. What Larry didn't know was that I was a mentor teacher. I had a first-year teacher working in my room after school on the days I tutored Mo. She was young, so Mo assumed she was a student. My principal already had a written statement from her. When Mo was asked in that meeting to describe what had been said to him, he forgot. The whole thing collapsed. Mo's mom blamed Larry and walked out embarrassed. Mo's mom made one last move. She told me the senior parents were meeting with my boss to get me fired and that she would put in a good word for me if I met with her first. I was sitting next to my principal when I got that email on my phone. He had no idea what she was talking about. I replied that I would be happy to meet everyone, but I would probably be eating fish during the meeting and hoped no one minded the smell. She realized I gave 0 fucks and backed off entirely. The last few weeks were frantic for these seniors. One by one they fell. They had done little to no real work for years and had no idea how to apply themselves. Other teachers, emboldened by watching me shut these kids down all semester, finally started holding them accountable too. A few barely managed D's, the rest failed. I had documented that none of them had attempted a single extra credit assignment. Hard to argue with that. For the final exam, I made it an online multiple choice test, with the questions and answers shuffled randomly. They had been planning to sit next to each other and cheat. Larry had even paid for a tutor to carry his friends. The shuffled format destroyed that plan. Larry managed to scrape a D-. The results: of 7 seniors, 1 didn't graduate and had to transfer schools. His parents had flown the whole family in for a graduation he couldn't take part in. 2 lost their scholarships entirely. Several ended up at the same low-ranked school together as roommates because it was the only place that would take them. Larry's college kicked him out before he could even start after his final GPA came in. He toured Europe over the summer and tried to come home to surprise his parents, who had sold the house and moved to a condo. They kicked him out immediately. Last anyone heard, he told people he joined the military but got discharged due to illness. Except he gave 3 different people 3 different diseases. Curly's parents eventually paid for college after all. He got kicked out halfway through for underage drinking. After living home, refusing to get a job, they finally kicked him out too. Last heard, he works at a vape shop. Mo went to college and tried to pay other kids to do his work. When that failed, he faked his grades to keep his mom paying. Eventually got kicked out. His mom now tells people he decided to become an entrepreneur and bought a drone to film weddings. Lest anyone heard, he was selling drugs. 1 senior, just 1, went to college, quit hanging with a group, got his head straight, graduated with honors, and later emailed me to say that being challenged in my class prepared him for everything that came after. That one made it worth it. This last one is titled "My Aunt Robbed My Grandma Blind, so I Had the IRS Destroy Her." This is going to be long, doctor. My aunt screwed over my grandma for years. I put my nose in her business, got my parents wise to the fraud, and eventually reported her to the IRS. The long arm of the IRS bankrupted her and her husband, and now they're destitute and too old to work. This happened about 5 years ago. My grandma was getting old, late 80s, early 90s. She had one wish: to not die in a senior home. That was easily doable. My grandpa had sold some assets decades back, invested the money, and let it ride for over 30 years. He never touched it. and he collected a pension. Grandma was set. When Grandpa died about 10 years before all this, Grandma appointed my dad, my aunt, and my uncle as trustees of the trust, basically trusted advisors responsible for her care going forward. Things were fine at first. Then my dad, Willie, moved further away and couldn't handle the day-to-day responsibilities anymore. My Aunt Rebecca told Grandma that she and my Uncle Fred, who lived in Arizona, could take over. Grandma agreed. A few times my dad went back to visit. He noticed things. Grandma didn't always have overnight care. Her mail wasn't picked up. Her driveway wasn't plowed. She'd lost her cable TV and her newspaper subscription. My dad assumed they'd just lapsed, so he had them reconnected. He also noticed Grandma was eating moldy food at times because her truck had been sold and she had no transportation. She basically sat home alone doing crossword puzzles. The craziest part, my Aunt Rebecca lived 2 miles away, and Grandma told my dad she only saw her on Saturdays for about 1 hour a week. Eventually, as with the elderly, my grandma passed. She did get her wish. She died in her own home. And that's when things got interesting. When the probate lawyer got everyone around the table, my dad, Aunt Rebecca, Uncle Fred, and another estranged aunt named Becky, shady business started surfacing immediately. Aunt Rebecca pushed hard for everyone to skip any audit or paperwork, just sell the house for around $400,000, split the remaining bank balance of roughly another $400,000, and walk away. Each sibling would get around $200,000, not a bad inheritance. My dad thought it felt rushed. He said the house was easily worth $600,000 based on size and location. Rebecca exploded, cursing at him, calling him names, furious that he wouldn't just sign then and there. She wanted a quick close while everyone looked the other way. My dad walked out. The deal wasn't signed. It took nearly 6 months before another meeting was scheduled. In the meantime, when a trustee dies and funds are under scrutiny, all financial accounts are frozen until every beneficiary is notified and signs off. At that second meeting, my dad came in with no intention of signing. He'd already convinced my Uncle Fred to agree to a full forensic audit of the accounts going back 5 years. When they demanded it at the meeting, Rebecca argued the audit would cost $5,000 and was a total waste of money, but 2 beneficiaries requested it, so it was happening. The audit report came back about 3 months later. Here's where it gets good. My dad started going through the report and immediately saw it was full of holes. Excessive food costs for a 90-year-old woman, car payments for a vehicle Grandma no longer owned, things that just didn't add up. He asked me to take a second look. I spent a Saturday night going through the whole thing, and here's what I found. 1 Costco food bills between $1,100 and $2,000 a month for the last 4 years, for 1 elderly woman. 2 telephone bills for 6 cell phones. Grandma had a home phone only. 3 gasoline charges of around $400 a month for a truck Grandma hadn't owned in 4 years, for house repairs billed through my aunt's husband's construction company. Things like a $16,000 roof, new garage doors, a home security system Grandma never had, all at inflated prices. 5. Grandma paid for Aunt Rebecca to take 2 vacations to Europe. 6. My estranged Aunt Becky was receiving a $2,000 monthly stipend from Grandma's account. So was Becky's deadbeat son, $2,500 a month, every single month for 5 years. 7. All grandkids were supposed to receive a $10,000 lump sum on their 30th birthday, replacing the $50 birthday check Grandma had always sent. Guess whose kids got paid out and whose didn't? Rebecca's kids. The estranged aunt's kids. Not me, not my siblings. 8. Grandma gave loans totaling around $200,000 to Rebecca's husband's construction company in exchange for equity. Right around when the housing market crashed, that equity became worthless. 9. High-value personal items, jewelry and other belongings simply vanished from the house, sold for cash. Armed with all of this, the third probate meeting was a different atmosphere entirely. In the time between Grandma's death and that meeting, Rebecca's husband's construction business had filed for bankruptcy, meaning that $200,000 in equity Grandma had held just evaporated. The probate lawyer made it clear this was fraud and breach of fiduciary duty. Aunt Rebecca was looking at real prison time. Literally 0. The estranged Aunt Becky received only $25,000 after all her stipend payments were factored in. My dad and Uncle Fred split the remainder, and the house sold on the first offer for $520,000. She had personally tried to rip me off for $10,000, and I took that personally, so I did some research. I figured it went nowhere. The IRS wanted me to come in for an appointment. The agent walked me through everything they'd found. It turned out my aunt had failed to declare around $1.2 million in additional income over 5 years. She owed the IRS approximately $420,000 in back taxes and penalties. There was no way she could pay that, not on a teacher's pension, and not after her husband's business had gone bankrupt. Her house was sold. Her vehicles were sold. They left the state. Now Aunt Rebecca and her husband live in a depressing desert town in the southwest, destitute and too old to work. The IRS paid me around $60,000 as a whistleblower reward about 3 months after the appointment. She should have just paid me that $10,000. And that is where we leave it tonight. A year, or an IRS audit 18 months later. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button. New long-form videos drop every Friday at 7 p.m. and I post shorts every single day.